Well, I am definitely testing something new out today. I'm trying to see if I am able to start broadcasting to Facebook. So let me just make sure that I have everything going here. Give me one moment. I'm hoping that this works, as I have never been able to do this before. And I think it is working. Yay! Yay! Welcome back to the Great Thinkers with Coach Janice Pocatello. The last couple of weeks, we have dove into the book As a Man Thinketh with author James Allen. We've been able to explore some of the thoughts and theories that have to do with scripture as well, because a lot of our beliefs in previous years and decades and eras have been by that good old book, the Bible. And I appreciate that we can think of it not as a biography, but a way for us to connect in a way that's more of a principle on how we can convey deeper thoughts and feelings. And I know that we had left off in part 1. So as you can see, this is part 2. We left off in how a man can be wretchedly poor because of laziness, how he can be a victim because he's been overindulgent, how he can be crooked because he has been seething in greed. And I know we left off again in the factor that we were going to start diving into the divine self and the secret self and what that looks like. So join me today in diving into what that means. What I found in some of my studies this week is that in reading Think and Grow Rich, the subconscious mind, I have the classic version, and there's a reason for that. So I can't really give you the page number if you have the newer edition. But on page 289, it relates to chapter 2 very much in saying that everything which man creates begins in the form of a thought impulse. Man can create nothing which he does not first conceive in thought. Through the aid of the imagination, thought impulses may be assembled into plans. The imagination, when under control, may be used for the creation of plans or purposes that lead to success in one's chosen occupation. All thought impulses intended for transmutation into their physical equivalent, voluntarily planted in the subconscious mind, must pass through the imagination and be mixed with faith. The mixing of faith with the plan or purpose intended for submission to the subconscious mind may be done through the imagination. Well, guess where our thought impulses come from? Guess what we have faith in? We have faith in source via our intuition. And we had actually covered that in the first chapter. Intuition is something that is meant to be top and foremost in where we are being guided. There is a little bit of a poem that was written by Ella Wheeler Wilcox that gave evidence to the understanding of the power of the subconscious mind. She wrote, "You can never tell what a thought will do in bringing you hate or love. For thoughts are things, and their airy wings are swifter than carrier doves. They follow the law of the universe. Each thing creates its kind. And they sped or speed or track to bring you back whatever went out from your mind. So again, going back to chapter 1, what are we feeling? What is in our heart? And that relates to where he goes in the last half of what we're going to cover today in the second part of the chapter on the effect of thought on circumstances. What this poem is relating to is your inner reality versus the external success. Whatever went out from your mind, whatever was in your heart, whatever you were listening to, was it intuition? Did you imagine something because of external circumstances? Were you falling into laziness, indulgence, or greed? Where did that come from? So I'm just going to move this book off to the side. Too many books on my desk. As we get into this, I want to relate to you that when we're talking about before, where James Allen says, one man fails because of his particular honesty, and that the other one prospers because of his particular dishonesty. And that's the result of a superficial judgment, which assumes that the dishonest man is almost totally corrupt, and the honest man almost entirely is virtuous. Well, as I ended off last week, basically one man is internally happy and comfortable with his secret self. But in reality, the other man isn't. Because there are some deeper philosophical and moral truths to that statement. He's saying that superficial judgment focuses only on the outward circumstances. And he's often missing the internal reality of what a person's life, particularly their inner peace or their inner conflicts, might be. I know that just in studying this book and the last portion of one of the programs that I'm doing right now, I had such an epitome of downloads in the last couple of weeks. I've really gotten in touch with that secret self because I've been hiding some things. I've been denying myself the truth in order to be able to face it, to move on. I've been holding myself captive in my paradigms because of that. So where we have outward circumstances, it doesn't necessarily reflect my inner state. And that's where it gets kind of frustrating, I guess. Because let's take the dishonest man. Okay, he may achieve material success. Think of a crook. But this doesn't mean that he is internally at peace again, or genuinely fulfilled. Conversely, an honest man who struggles outwardly may possess the inner sense of peace and moral integrity that the dishonest man lacks. And that's where I've been battling right now. I feel good, but then when I got in touch a little bit deeper with some of my secrets, I was like, oh yeah, there it is. That's what I need to cut the strings from. We've got iron strings. Emerson actually related to that when it comes to our faith and where our heart is. That is where those iron strings are. So material success equals happiness. Does it? Just because a person appears successful in the world, that does not mean that they're truly happy or at peace. Because they're going to have guilt, fear, the thought of being caught, and the inability to trust others. That's where I actually can relate to that, because I've had a hard time with some of my feelings, and it's difficult for me to trust. And one of the biggest things with how I'm thinking is the ability to trust. Trust intuition, trust faith, trust that it is meant for me. On the other hand, does material struggle equal failure? Does it mean that the person that is honest but experiences financial or external hardships, does that mean that they can be content because their conscience is clear? Their integrity might give them a sense of inner peace that the dishonest person may never know because of that material wealth, but you're still seeking something externally to come back to you. It's not a bad thing to want things. This is where you have to really discern where that greed is, where that indulgent is, where you all of a sudden get something and you get a little lazy because you get comfortable. Try to realize that that's a blessing that's encouraging you to continue moving forward as an honest person. And that's where that concept of the secret self comes in. If you're being honest with yourself, we've got the divine self and we've got the secret self. So let's cover the secret self first. I'm going to read to you a quick little paragraph here on page 18, and it covers the divine self, but mostly the secret self. And then we'll just kind of explore that a little bit more. It is pleasing to human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtue, but not until a man has exasperated every sickly, bitter, and impure thought from his mind and washed every sinful stain from his soul. Can he be in a position to know and declare that his sufferings are the result of his good and not of his bad qualities? And on the way to, yet long before he has reached that supreme perfection, he will have found working in his mind and life the great law, which is absolutely just, and which cannot, therefore, give good for evil or evil for good. That's the divine self. That's where you are connected to source. You can't have one without the other kind of interfering, because you're going to be given choices, right? But which divinity are you connecting yourself to? What is your soul tethered to? Possessed of such knowledge, he will then know, looking back upon his past ignorance and blindness, that his life is and always was justly ordered, and that all of his past experiences, good and bad, were the equitable outworking of his evolving yet unevolved self. There it is. That's the secret self. What are you harboring? What are you still tethered to? Remember, good and bad, honest and dishonest, that could be causing some of your paradigms. So in the secret self, a person's internal world is that it's often hidden to others, okay? But it's still deeply felt by the individual. You still know it's there. It might take you a little while to discover it, especially if you've had any type of trauma or experiences that were sudden impact, because our subconscious mind has a funny way of forgetting certain things or buries it for a really long time. The secret self is where a person's true happiness or discomfort lies. The dishonest man, outwardly, he prospers, but he may be plagued by that inner restlessness and knowingness that he can't be peaceful because he knows his success is built on that deception. He's done things to others due to his ego. His external comfort isn't a reflection of his internal dissatisfaction with himself, though. Don't kid yourself. He's still going to have those feelings because he's human. That is the great law. Divine self is still going to be trying to guide you back to the good. That's the way it is. I truly believe that no one is born evil. Now, the honest man, even though he may struggle externally, I don't know about you, but looking in my bank account sometimes makes me go, hey, but I've been really honest about stuff. What is going on? But again, it's only been within the last couple of weeks where that light bulb went on. I am internally happy in my secret self, but my secret self still had things that it needed to reveal to me that I was still tethered to. Because I stay aligned with my values and my principles. Sometimes my boundaries and my standards are what cause me to have some of these internal thoughts and ideas that don't jive with where I know I'm meant to be going. So I have to be reflecting upon that in order to be in harmony with my conscience. Because that's the only thing that's going to bring me satisfaction and peace, regardless of what's going on the outside. That's why I keep studying. I've been doing this for over 5 years, almost 6 years now. And I just discovered something about me in studying some of the materials that I have over the last 2 weeks. He goes on to talk about a little bit more on also the true self. He says, suffering is always the effect of wrong thought in some direction. It is an indication that the individual is out of harmony with himself, with the law of his being. So that's kind of what I had just touched on, where we had the true self come in. You've got your divine self, secret self, and true self that he is referring to here. He challenges the notion that people can be judged as almost totally corrupt or almost entirely virtuous based on what other people see from their external circumstances. But what that judgment ignores is the complexity of our human nature in the true self. Because we have those inner battles that we face. There's the dishonest person who is wholly corrupt, but we overlook the possibility that, they might outwardly have something that they could succeed in that is honest. What is their true self telling them? They know. Same as the honest person being completely virtuous. We have to acknowledge that they're still going to have those doubts, those frustrations, and those temptations to do something bad just to get ahead. It's human nature. True self. It's the law of our being. Each person's internal reality is more important than their outward circumstances. A person may be dishonest, yet deeply troubled by it. Like he repeats that quite a few times in the course of 10 paragraphs, because he wants to let you know that you need to be mindful that your inner peace and harmony with your conscience is more important than material prosperity. That's what's going to connect us to our source through intuition more. That's what's going to give us a positive, imaginative experience. He goes on a little bit deeper about the divine self. And the divine self, again, just to reiterate what I spoke of a few moments ago, is your highest, most spiritual aspect. It is the one that is connected to that intuition. It represents your connection to the divine being, whatever your being is. It's your universal consciousness. That's the part of yourself that transcends from the individual ego. It's got nothing to do with that. And your personal identity, it's got nothing to do with that. That is that oneness, that energy that connects us all. This is the part that we have as our inner guidance because of the universal truths, the principles of love, compassion, and wisdom that we should have for all. It's in almost every single culture and tradition. Every single being has some sort of spiritual practice. And it involves that transcending ego-driven desire and aligning oneself with that higher purpose or your truth. It's that part of the self that is eternal, unchanging. And don't forget, we were born perfect. And there is that spark of the divine in every single person because we are one energy. Then we can go into that, from divine, we can go further into the secret self. The one that is evolving, but yet unevolved at the same time. Because every second we are evolving into something else. And that's your private internal aspects. And only you know that. That's why it's called secret. Only you know what your internal being is. It's the part that experiences the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions in solitude. It's your conscience and your moral compass. It's your sense of right and wrong that governs your inner truths. It's that emotional and mental state that is hard to describe to other people. That's why we have psychologists and psychiatrists to try to figure some of those things out with you, because it's attached to those deepest feelings, desires, fears, struggles that may not be visible to the outside world, especially if it's something that you've had happen to you that you have a hard time sharing with yourself, let alone anybody else. And that's where that self-honesty comes in. How do you see yourself, your secret self, when no one else is watching? That's what he's referring to here. That internal dialogue that you have, that battle of the wits, so to speak, between your actions and your values. Don't overthink things, though. You don't have to beat yourself up and come home after you've had a conversation and be like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or ooh, you know. It's not meant to be that. It's just meant to help you be in harmony or in conflict with the divine self and your true self. Your secret self is the one that you need to connect to in order to free yourself from some of those experiences that have maybe given you that inner conflict. It affects your choices on your emotional and your psychological levels. It's your mental state of being. Then he goes into, again, the true self. That's the natural law that every single one of us is. It's your authentic essence. It's the core of who we truly are when we strip away any of the social conditioning. So culture, traditions, your employment, your family structure, if you were to take all of that out, the things that you associated fear with, false identities, or that personification or idolizing, ego-driven desires, like you don't care what anybody else wants, this is what you want. It's your genuine self-expression. It is the center of your personal truth, living in alignment with that true self. And it is that self-acceptance and that self-awareness. Excuse me. You have to understand the divine self and the secret self, though, to kind of peel that back. But it's unlike the divine self, though, because that's seen as your spiritual or your universal aspect of your consciousness. The true self is more personal. So the divine is more a oneness with others, but the true self is more personal because it reflects you as a person, as an individual, the person that you were meant to be in this life before things had to maybe get messed up a little bit. That secret self needs to kind of unlock and let out. We've all had it, especially with the way culture is and societal norms. Even bullying in school is a perfect example. I'm sure you can think of something or something that happened at work, right? So the relationship between the three, and I think it's really important that we cover that, is that You've got the divine self as the spiritual aspect, and it's linked to that divinity, okay? Your secret self is that deep, personal, inner experience, and your true self is that authentic person as an individual. The divine self guides you. Secret self is your place for self-reflection. And the true self emerges when you, as a person, live authentically for what you've discovered with the secret and divine self. Because when you're aligned with your divine self, you're going to act out of love and wisdom and compassion because you're living within the universal laws. And that gives you that state of peace and joy, and you're transcending. When you're in touch with your true self, you're grounded because you are being authentic. You know who you are and what you stand for, and you live with integrity. And the secret self is your internal dialogue. And it will reveal to you if you're living in alignment with that true self or the divine self. So you've got to be honest with your secret self. That's the key. And that's personally for myself where I realized that I was still being troubled by some things. So we've got how a man may be cursed and rich, and how he may be blessed and poor, that comes in just after this. That all has to do with your responsibility to all of these selves. Where does your responsibility lie with the cause and the effect of everything? You've got a responsibility to heed the law of the cause and effect. You have a responsibility for self-mastery and diving into where your thoughts are being cultivated from. Are you indulging in things? Is there a way you could maybe purify your thoughts? Are you listening to the divine self? Are you living authentically? How can you align your inner with your outer being? Because he says here, when you search for the hidden justice which regulates his life. A man only begins to be a man when he ceases to whine and revile. He commences to search for the hidden justice which regulates his life. How are you regulating yourself? How are you in that mental harmony? If we got ourselves in a misfortune or a hardship, okay, it's not random or undeserved. It's a reflection of your previous mental state. Don't forget how he started this book, that this is just a looking glass. Our environment now is because we had that reflection. So be very conscious of that. You are responsible for where you're sitting in all of that. The hidden justice that he is referring to here is governed by the moral and universal laws, such as the law of attraction. Those laws dictate that certain mental and emotional states produce specific outcomes. It's common sense, actually, if you think about it, because honesty and integrity is going to bring about trust and opportunities. Deceit is going to bring about dishonest and instability. Gratitude and love is going to foster abundance and positive relationships, while envy and resentment are going to create a sense of lack or dissatisfaction. He really shows you the laws of polarity here, doesn't he? Live your life by the universal laws. They are impartial. And why is that? Because they apply equally to everyone. There isn't one person that's above another when it comes to the universal laws. Doesn't matter what your circumstances are. A person that sows negative thoughts is going to reap negative outcomes. We talked about that in part 1. And the opposite is true for those that have positive. They're going to reap some blessings. You have to regulate and be responsible for how you're creating your conditions and your mental attitude. Period. No one, absolutely no one, will escape the consequences of their thought, whether they be good or bad. So the hidden justice that he is referring to here again is in the man's own mind. It is within. It is that which acts as the silent architect that builds our life. The responsibility lies in us making that conscious effort to shape our thoughts to be in alignment with the universal laws, the universal truths, allowing us to have harmony between the inner and the outer worlds. It's not in administering things on the outward. Oh, I feel like crap. I'm just going to go and buy a new car. Bad example, but you get the idea, right? You can't hide things. You can't hide things from the universal laws. We are the creator of our own experience, and the justice that we have in that is a direct result of those thoughts. Therefore, the key to happiness, health, and prosperity has nothing to do with changing your external thoughts. How many times have you heard somebody say, oh, I hate this place. I can't stand it. I'm just going to move, or I'm just going to change my job, or whatever. Drama follows drama. If you got drama going on upstairs, you're going to have drama going on everywhere. You can't outrun your secret self. You have to become aware of it. So that's where that hidden justice comes in. You have to justify what you have as a secret self so that you can get more in contact. Call up intuition, call up source, and get in contact with them. Pray about it, meditate about it. Allow truth self to live authentically so that you can be in harmony with where secret self can heal. That law is within you. The justice is within you. That righteousness, there's that word again, refers to being in alignment with both the laws and the justice together. It's that expression of moral and spiritual integrity. It's interesting, you know, that he goes into that power of awareness now. Let's talk about that righteousness a little bit further. He actually gives you the do's and the don'ts. You can't live a life cultivating proper thoughts in accordance to acting with the laws, seeking balance and fairness, living righteously. And I don't mean righteously where you're better than everybody else. I mean that you're actually aligning your actions with your emotions and your thoughts and your deepest values. You can't live like anything of the above states if you don't have the knowing of what to do and what not to do. Like he's got, I don't know how many, like, I don't know if you can see, but I underlined the don'ts in red and the do's in green. All of the do nots have to do with fear, doubt, anger, greed, envy. He goes through all of them. The things that he wants you to do, thoughts of confidence, love, purpose, gratitude, and integrity. Integrity. You don't fight the circumstances themselves, but you discipline the mind to maintain a positive attitude. You're going to have failures. You're going to have fear. You're going to be around foul-mouthed people and drunkards and stuff like that. But how are you keeping your mind? What thoughts are you constructing around that? Are you going to judge? Or are you going to be judicious? Offer help. Figure out where you can be in service. If you can. Sometimes you just have to realize that those external circumstances aren't in your wheelhouse anymore, and you have to be helping from a distance, so to speak. The external circumstances may seem beyond your control, right? But how you react to those conditions and the thoughts that you hold about them, that's what you have control of. Your thoughts are what shape your perception about these situations. Your thoughts influence your actions that you're going to have directly impact your behavior. And through consistent thought choices in that, it can begin to shape your circumstances differently because your thoughts are creative. And with creative thoughts that show us all of these successes and happinesses and love, I'd rather have that become a habit, wouldn't you? So over time, he says to us that we need to have that become a habit of thought. Being in that state of understanding the law of attraction. He says the world is your kaleidoscope, and the varying combinations of colors, which at every succeeding moment it presents to you, are the exquisitely adjusted pictures of your ever-moving thoughts. So you do want to cultivate thoughts of love and kindness, purpose and direction. Have gratitude. Exercise that self-discipline. Don't indulge in fear or worry or focus on failures or past mistakes. And for heaven's sakes, don't compare yourself to anybody else or envy or have resentment. Move on. Nobody's got time for that. Persist in your positive thoughts. That's what he's saying here. So you will be what you will to be. Right there, that's thought become things. Let failure find its false content. That's where you're learning. In that poor word environment, cause, but spirit scorns it and is free. That's the effect. It masters time. It conquers space. That means our thoughts, because of divine self, are already there. And it bids the tyrant circumstance uncrown and fill a servant's place. Fill it with something else. The human will, there's one of your 6 higher faculties, that force unseen, you've got to persist, the offspring of a deathless soul. That's your true self. That's the offspring of willing yourself to be connected to the divine self. Can hew a way to any goal, though walls of granite intervene. Be not impatient in delays. After all, patience is a virtue. But wait as one who understands. When spirit rises and commands. Just like we demand and command of ourselves, divine self commands with us. The gods are ready to obey, but only if you have that awareness. Guys, what's your secret self saying? Are you living authentically in your true self? Are you like me and you had some things that you were still needing to sort out, so to speak? It's interesting to know that we've got a lot of things within this second chapter, As a Man Thinketh. It's not an accident that it's the longest one in the book. So that concludes part 2. Philosophy definitely goes around in circles, but it's that constant repetition that keeps us in touch with the do's and the don'ts of how you stay connected to divine, secret, and true self. So until next week, have a wonderful, blessed time. And if you haven't already gotten this book somehow, I encourage you to do so, because it's a gooder. We'll dive into the 3rd chapter, the effect of thought on health and the body, next week. See you all then.